The series takes place in dystopian New London. Humans no longer reproduce and each fetus is created in a lab and designated as a caste. The 5 castes are Alpha, Beta, Gamma, Delta, and Epsilon. Alphas and Betas are the smartest and most privileged, while Deltas and Epsilons are cloned and given undesirable jobs. Once born, the children are all conditioned using electric prods to stick to their designation. Because reproduction is now the state's job, no one may marry or be in a monogamous relationship, and privacy is rigorously outlawed. The entire population of New London is implanted with a bionic eye chip called Indra, which is supposedly responsible for maintaining transparency in the city. Because of the chip, every resident can see what others are doing, whether at work or in the toilet. The only way to go private is to remove your eye chip, but doing so is considered immoral. Anyone who feels even a hint of a negative emotion, such as sadness, fear, or anxiety, can be. New London is the only city in the world where no one is unhappy. At the beginning we meet Lenina. Crown, a Beta Plus microbiologist for the New London government, is summoned to Alpha Plus Bernard's office since one must respect their elders. Lenina quickly heads there, and on the way we get a glimpse of the futuristic city. When she arrives, Bernard warns her that she's breaking rules and being selfish by exclusively sleeping with another Alpha Plus named Henry. When Lenina denies this, Bernard pulls up a projection showing all 22 times she and Henry had slept together in the past few weeks, demonstrating that no privacy rules. Natural-born humans who declined to sign up for the New London Project 200 years ago continue to dwell in the savage lands. The savage lands have relationships, marry, and have children, but they're all impoverished and live in rundown towns distant from New London. Inhabitants out here don't use soma, they just attempt to live and have greater freedom, but for the people of New London, the savages are a source of pleasure, like a zoo. They do disparaging pranks to amuse their advanced counterparts. New London's director orders Bernard Ed to go look at an accident. Bernard finds a large crowd gathered around a corpse that has fallen from a tall building. The deceased is identified as an Epsilon cleaner, and another Epsilon C. Jack 60 is seen grieving his friend. Before anyone says a word, Bernard distributes soma to the crowd to cope with their trauma and sends them all away. Sheila asks John to load the rifles with actual bullets so they may massacre the next batch of New Londoners. John refuses, but Sheila warns that he and his mother will be hunted down elsewhere. Bernard is still perplexed and disturbed by the visions he saw earlier, so he pulls out his eye chip to relax, but the director of New London appears. Ed calls him to his office and tells him he is unfit to be an Alpha Plus because he is not assertive and demanding enough. He also reprimands Bernard for acting private and suggests he take a vacation to the savage lands to clear his mind. That evening, a slightly upset Bernard runs into Lenina and tells her everything that happened that day. He also reveals that he has started experiencing loneliness and that is why he is being so private. Lenina empathizes with him and agrees to go to the savage lands with him. The next morning they board a rocket which takes them to their destination, and in less than 12 minutes take that Bezos. When they reach their hotel, the receptionist briefs them on the different tours and attractions they can partake in savage lands. In particular, Lenina is taken aback by the strange customs here, like getting pregnant, driving vehicles, battling, taming animals. After this, they board a tour bus and watch different savage events that are incomprehensible in New London, such as the push and pull at a department store, marriage and faith in God. A reluctant John is forced to load the real bullets into the gun, fearing that the cult members will go after his mother. Even his best friend Madison starts ordering him around. Later, the last show of the day, the House of Monogamy commences, and all the New Londoners are their consciousness. Somehow she drags him to a nearby residence and starts crying, and to make matters worse, the cult members arrive outside looking for them. John spots them and gets ready to alert the other cult members, but when he sees the innocent couple, he surprisingly changes his mind and decides to help them. Shortly after, John brings the couple to his house, where his kind mother Linda tries to save Bernard. She takes the bullet out of his body and gets him to a hospital. John quickly hides them in the attic and welcomes Madison inside. He promises her he doesn't know about the New Londoners, but she's skeptical. As she searches the house, Bernard regains consciousness and starts wailing in pain. Enraged, Madison points her gun at John, but Linda stabs her from behind and kills her. Bernard, feeling better, blames the savages for everything, but Lenina says they're alive thanks to them. Meanwhile, we learned that John's mother Linda was from New London and had come to the savage lands 3 decades ago with her love interest, but after she became pregnant, she decided to stay in savage lands for her son, as it is illegal to have a child in New London. Her husband left with the promise of coming back, but he never did. We also learn that there is an electromagnetic barrier that surrounds the savage lands. Bernard and Lenina quickly cross the barrier, and a cult soldier who tried to follow them was burned to ashes. Seeing this, John hesitates, giving the cult soldiers time to shoot. Fortunately, Linda pushes him over the line, and he escapes the savage lands without being burned. All of them escape while the cruel occult leader Sheila stares at them unblinkingly. Bernard is completely healed, but Lenina feels strange and is racked with guilt and sadness. Even the Soma can't help her. It seems she has started feeling, which isn't possible in New London. Meanwhile, John is confined in a room where he screams about his mother. Mustafa Mond, the smartest man in the land, observes him closely and deduces that the savages are weak when it comes to combat. Mond assigned Bernard with the task because he knows the savage personally, but things don't go as planned. John is scared of even the basic amenities like the elevator, tall skyscrapers, and even the Soma. After a while, a technician approaches him to measure his eyeballs for the Indira ship and discovers that John has a very rare eyeball that only an alpha exotic person has. Alpha exotics are the rarest and best of all inhabitants, and only 0.01% of New Londoners have ever been found as such. Despite this revelation, John refuses to have the implant, and while Bernard is away, he sneaks out of the room and into the main hall, where everyone is amused to see a savage. They call him names and stare at him until he freaks out and runs away. John, who is scared and confused, agrees Bernard is also looking for John, and he stops by Ed's office for a quick chat. Strangely, on the table he finds Ed's eye chip, which implies that he has gone private. Since Ed is also an alpha exotic, he quickly takes out John's eye chip from earlier and compares them. Lo and behold, the two implants match, revealing that John's estranged father is none other than Ed himself. Ed brings John to where a rocket will carry him to his property. Ed discloses that there are thousands of other cities like the savage lands where humans have constructed civilizations. He knows this because he has visited numerous of them, including the savage lands. Lance understands that Ed is his father, who never returned after conceiving him. He wants explanations, but Ed doesn't care. John gets angry and starts a scuffle that ends with Ed accidentally falling off the cliff to his death, but since he left his eye chip in his office, no one saw the incident. Soon John rushes back to the city and stumbles upon one of Watson's pleasure parties. He sees hundreds of people dancing and gets scared, but just then the partygoers notice him and surround him. Fortunately, Bernard arrives in time to save John. Mont informs Bernard that their director Ed inadvertently fell to his death. Bernard doesn't believe her and instead admits that he was John's father. Surprisingly, Mont already knew this and says they must assimilate John into their society as soon as possible. Bernard agrees, and before leaving he promises to handle the situation well. First, he takes John to the Children's Learning Center where a bunch of kids are learning how to play a game. John isn't interested, but he sits around as the kids don't stare and judge him. Next, he takes John to pleasure party designer Watson's place, but Watson already knows about the savage. Lenina goes to play tennis with her best friend Franny in New London. People play only for fun and not competitiveness or prizes, but Lenina humiliates her friend before walking out. She then goes to her room and eats several Soma pills to calm down at night. The pleasure party begins, and Bernard takes John there. He plans to teach John how to interact with others, but before that, a desperate Watso arrives. John arrives and overhears everything. Seeing his only friend being bullied, he becomes angry and convinces Bernard to take action. He even teaches him how to punch someone, as the people of New London don't know how to throw a fist. After some practice, the two head back to the club and see Henry dancing with Lenina. Bernard hits Henry, startling everyone, even Epsilon Kyak 60. Witnesses the activity and grins, just like in the Fortnite lobby. He seems to want to dance to be free and fight people in the closing scene. Bernard meets Lenina in a secluded room, and the two express how they've been feeling different lately. Savage John dances with various people to see what happens. Part 2 Recap. View module. Insert chart.